The acrid smell of burnt coffee and antiseptic clung to the air in the surgical residence lounge, a smell Dr. Anya Sharma had come to associate with mediocrity. It was a thick, cloying scent, the smell of compromise. She stared at the suture practice pad on the table, a flimsy piece of silicone scored with pretend wounds. Her fingers, which had once worked deftly inside the chest cavity of a soldier with nothing but a headlamp and the percussive rhythm of distant mortar fire for company, felt clumsy and foreign. "Sharma, you with us?" The voice belonged to Dr. Marcus Vance, Chief of Trauma Surgery at Mercy General. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his pristine white coat, a smirk playing on his lips. He was a man who wore his authority like a tailored suit, and it always felt a size too small. Anya looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "Yes, Dr. Vance. Daydreaming about finally closing a simple appendectomy without my supervision," he drawled, earning a few sycophantic chuckles from the other junior residents. Focus, complacency kills. The irony was a physical weight in her chest. Complacency. He spoke of it in the sterile, predictable world of scheduled surgeries and textbook cases. He had no concept of what true complacency cost. He had never had to decide which of 3 bleeding-out soldiers had the best chance of survival with only one set of hands to help them. "I'll remember that," she said, her voice flat. Vance's eyes narrowed. He enjoyed the back and forth, the little power plays, but Anya never gave him the satisfaction of a real reaction. She was an enigma to him, a quiet, almost unnervingly calm resident who performed her duties with a robotic precision that was competent but never brilliant. She was just there. "See that you do," he snapped, his good humor evaporating. "We have a 4-car pile-up on the interstate. ER is already a zoo. I want you on intake basic triage. Don't get in the way. Not a request, a statement." He wanted her sorting sprains and stitching up lacerations while the real work happened in the trauma bays. It was where he always put her. The bottom of the ladder. It was exactly where she wanted to be. Hidden, anonymous, she nodded, pulling off her practice gloves. Understood, as she walked towards the emergency department, the familiar shift began. The quiet hum of the hospital was starting to crescendo into the controlled chaos she knew all too well. Beeps, shouts, the squeal of gurney wheels on linoleum. For most, it was a symphony of panic. For her, it was a rhythm she understood. But this was Mercy General, not Kandahar. Here the rules were different. Slower, safer, maddeningly inefficient. She passed a nurse's station where 2 senior nurses were gossiping. "Did you see Vance this morning?" He reamed out Peterson for using the wrong gauge suture on a superficial wound. Heard him from down the hall. Thinks he's God's gift to surgery. Anya kept walking. Vance wasn't a bad surgeon. He was a textbook surgeon. He followed the protocols, obeyed the hierarchy, and colored inside the lines. He had never faced a situation where the textbook had been blown to pieces and the lines had been washed away in blood. She missed that world. The clarity of it, she hated that she missed it. The ER was already overflowing. Cops, paramedics, worried family members. Anya slipped into the fray, her senses on high alert. A woman with a broken arm, crying. A teenager with glass in his scalp, looking dazed. A man in a suit, complaining about chest pains that were probably just anxiety. She moved from one to the next, her hands efficient, her voice calm and monotone. "Can you tell me your name? Where does it hurt? Are you allergic to any medication?" The litany of civilian medicine. She was applying a pressure dressing to a man's forehead when the call came over the main radio. A paramedic's voice tight, with a strange mix of urgency and confusion. "Mercy General. This is Medic 1. ETA 5 minutes with a single male mid-30s, driver in a single vehicle rollover. Massive crush injuries, unstable pelvis, probable internal bleeding. Vitals are all over the place." Vance, who had just entered the ER, grabbed a radio. "Medic 1, define all over the place. Give me numbers." "That's the thing, Trauma 1, the paramedic replied, the static crackling. "Heart rate is fluctuating between 180 and 40. Beep is hypertensive at 70 over palp, but his core temp is 104 degrees. And we're getting some weird electrical feedback from his chest. It's interfering with our monitor." Anya froze, the roll of gauze still in her hand. Electrical feedback. Core temp of 104. No, it couldn't be. Vance looked puzzled. "Interference? Did you try moving the leads?" "Roger that. No change." "It's like I don't know. It's like he's got a generator running inside him. And listen to this, sir. The vehicle was completely totaled, but his GCs was 15 at the scene. He was conscious and oriented before he passed out, kept asking if the package was secure." Anya's blood ran cold. Package, the word hit her like a physical blow, a ghost from another life. "Forget the package," Vance barked into the radio. "Just keep him alive and get him here. I want Trauma Bay 2 prepped. Full trauma panel, chest and pelvic x-rays, and get the ore on standby. Sharma." Anya flinched at her cover name. "You're on suction. Try not to drop it." She just nodded, her mind racing. It was a coincidence. It had to be. The program was defunct. Buried, the survivors scattered to the winds, their records expunged. No one was left. Except her. And, apparently him. 5 minutes later, the ambulance bay doors slammed open. The wail of the siren cut off abruptly, replaced by shouting. But there was another sound. Two, the sleek, almost silent hum of expensive engines. Anya glanced toward the entrance. 2 black sedans, government plates, had pulled up right behind the ambulance. 2 men in dark, impeccably tailored suits got out. They moved with a predatory stillness that did not belong in a hospital parking lot. They weren't cops. They weren't FBI. She knew exactly what they were. She felt a spike of pure, ice-cold dread. They were here. For him. Which meant they would soon be here for her. The paramedics burst through the doors with the gurney. On it was a man who was a ruin of torn flesh and bruised skin. His face was a mess of blood and swelling, but even through the damage, she saw the sharp line of his jaw, the specific scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Chief Petty Officer John Elias. Call sign Reaper. The last time she had seen him, he was providing cover fire while she performed an emergency thoracotomy on his commanding officer in the middle of a sandstorm in the Al-Qadir Desert. Her hands began to tremble. A faint, barely perceptible tremor. She curled them into fists, digging her nails into her palms. "Not here. Not now. Let's go. Let's go." Vance shouted, taking charge, into Bay 2. "What's his status?" "Lost consciousness 60 seconds out. The paramedic panted, running alongside the gurney. Beep is dropping fast. We're wide open on 2 lines of saline. As they wheeled him past the entrance, one of the suited men stepped forward. Holding up a hand, we need to secure the patient. The lead paramedic, a burly man named Dave, didn't even slow down. He's a trauma patient, pal, not a briefcase. Get out of the way. The agent's eyes were like chips of granite. This is a matter of national security. That man is federal property. Vance, who had no patience for bureaucracy in the face of exsanguination, got right in the agent's face. He's my patient, and he's dying. You can read me my rights after I save his life. Now move. To Anya's surprise, the agent hesitated, then gave a curt nod. He and his partner didn't leave, though. They followed the gurney, stopping at the door to Trauma Bay 2, their gazes sweeping over every person in the room. Watching, waiting inside the bay, the chaos was immediate. Get me a line for a central catheter, Vance ordered. Cut off his clothes. Page the oar. Tell them we're coming up now. Massive transfusion protocol on standby. A nurse began slicing through Elias's blood-soaked pants and shirt. As the fabric fell away, everyone in the room stopped for a fraction of a second. His chest and abdomen were a roadmap of old scars, but beneath the skin, faint blue lines pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. They branched out from a small, circular disc embedded just below his sternum, the source of the electrical interference. What in God's name is that? A young nurse whispered. Vance stared, his professional composure cracking for a moment. Some kind of experimental medical device? A pacemaker? No pacemaker looks like that, another doctor murmured. Anya knew what it was. Project Chimera. A DARPA-funded wetware system designed to enhance a soldier's physical performance. A network of nanites that regulated metabolism, sped up healing, and interfaced directly with the user's neural pathways. A system she had helped design, a system that had catastrophically failed. The monitor beside the bed shrieked, "He's in V-fib." A nurse yelled, "BP is gone, charging to 200. Vance grabbed the paddles. Clear. The body on the table jumped, but the jagged rhythm on the screen didn't change. No conversion. Charging to 300. Clear. Another jump. Nothing. 360. Clear. The smell of burnt hair filled the air. The line on the monitor remained a chaotic scribble. Damn it! Vance slammed the paddle back onto the machine. Push 1 of Epi and 100 of Lido. Anya stepped forward, her voice low but clear. It won't work. Vance spun around, his face slick with sweat, his eyes wild. What did you say, Sharma? Did you say something? The defibrillator is useless, she said, her voice gaining strength. You're fighting the system. It's trying to regulate his heart, but the crush injuries are causing a feedback loop. You're just throwing electricity at a short circuit. He stared at her as if she'd just started speaking in tongues. What the hell are you talking about? Who are you, a biomechanic? Get back on suction before you contaminate my field. There's a manual override, she said, ignoring his command, walking closer to the gurney. She pointed a steady finger at a small, almost invisible indentation on the central disc on Elias's chest. You need to deactivate the autonomic governor. A 22-gauge spinal needle, inserted 3 centimeters, angled at 15 degrees. Vance's mouth hung open. The entire room had gone silent, save for the frantic, useless alarm of the egg. The two agents at the door were now pressed against the glass, their eyes locked on her. "Are you insane?" Vance finally sputtered. "You want me to stick a needle into an unknown device in his chest? Based on what?" "A lucky guess." "It's not a guess," Anya said calmly. The monitor let out a long final tone. The scribbled line went flat. "He's a systole," a nurse said, her voice trembling. "We lost him." "No," Vance commanded, desperation in his voice. "Start compressions. Now." A resident jumped onto a stool and began pumping on Elias's chest, but it was a futile gesture. As the first compression landed, Elias's eyes shot open. They were lucid, terrifyingly lucid. They scanned the room, past the panicked faces, past Vance, and locked directly onto her. His lips, cracked and bloody, moved. A single rasping word echoed in the sudden, tomb-like silence of the trauma bay. "Ghost." Every head turned toward her. Vance looked from the dying man on the table to the junior resident he'd been belittling for months. His face was a mask of utter, profound confusion. "What did he call you?" Anya met his gaze. The time for hiding was over. A man she had sworn to protect was dying in front of her because of protocols that didn't apply, because of a life she had tried to bury. She walked to the instrument tray, her movements now fluid and certain. She picked up a spinal needle. "He called me his doctor," she said. Then she turned to the resident performing CPR. "Stop compressions." It was not a request. It was an order delivered with the kind of absolute authority that comes only from standing on the knife's edge between life and death 1,000 times over. The resident's hands froze mid-pump. "Sharma, have you lost your mind?" Vance roared, stepping in front of her. "You are relieved of your duties." "Security." Anya didn't even look at him. Her eyes were on the flat line on the monitor. She had seconds. "Maybe. You're going to kill him," Vance snarled, grabbing her arm. She finally turned her head, her gaze so cold and intense it made him physically recoil. The timid, unremarkable resident was gone. In her place was someone he had never seen before. A commander. A warrior. "He's already dead," she said, her voice a blade. "Now get out of my way, doctor, or I'll go through you." For a heart-stopping moment, they were locked in a standoff. The chief of trauma and the ghost. The hospital's rules against the laws of a war he couldn't imagine. Behind them, one of the agents at the door spoke into his wrist. "It's her. She's here. Project Chimera is active." Vance saw the shift in the room. He saw the way the other nurses and doctors were looking at her, not with confusion anymore, but with a dawning, terrified respect. He saw the dead man on the table who had known her name. He let go of her arm. Anya didn't waste the opportunity. She moved to the head of the table, her focus absolute. The world narrowed to the pale, still chest of John Elias, the faint blue glow of the device beneath his skin, and the needle in her hand. "I need a sterile drape, and someone get me an intraosseous drill. We're going to need direct access to the marrow for the counteragent." "Counteragent?" A nurse stammered. "Counteragent for what?" "For what's killing him," Anya said, not looking up. She swabbed the skin over the chimera disc with alcohol. "His nanites are in a cascade failure. They're interpreting the tissue damage as a catastrophic system breach and initiating a self-destruct sequence to protect the technology. They're actively digesting his organs." A wave of horrified understanding washed over the room. His core temperature wasn't a fever, it was the heat from a billion microscopic machines breaking down his body from the inside out. "That's impossible," Vance breathed, his arrogance completely shattered, replaced by a chilling awe. "Impossible is just a matter of perspective," Anya said, her fingers finding the small indentation on the disc. She held the spinal needle poised over it. "This is the manual reboot. It will temporarily halt the cascade, but it will also deactivate all his autonomic functions. Heartbeat, respiration, everything. I'll have to restart him from scratch." She looked up at the stunned team. "When I give the order, I need you to push 10 milligrams of adenosine. It will stop what's left of the chaotic electrical activity and give me a clean slate. Then I'm going to need someone to bag him at a rate of 1 breath every 6 seconds. No more, no less." "Can you do that?" A young nurse, eyes wide, nodded numbly. "Yes, doctor," they called her doctor, not Sharma. "Doctor," Anya locked eyes with Vance. "I need you on the defibrillator. I'm going to have to pace him externally, but the voltage has to be precise." "I'll call it out. Do exactly as I say." Vance, the chief of surgery, the man who had ordered her to do scut work minutes ago, just nodded. "What do you need?" "Set it to 20 joules, not 200. 20, any more and you'll fry the implant's circuitry." He adjusted the machine, his hands surprisingly steady. Anya took a deep breath, the air tasting of ozone and fear. The flat line on the monitor was a silent scream. She had maybe a minute of brain viability left, maybe less. She angled the needle. 15 degrees. "Adenosine now," she commanded. A nurse pushed the drug into his central line. Anya slid the needle into his chest, 3 centimeters deep. There was a soft click, a tactile give as the needle seated correctly. On Elias's chest, the pulsing blue lights flickered once, then died. The faint hum of the device went silent. The man on the table was now, in every conceivable medical and technical sense, an empty vessel. "He's off," Vance whispered. "Now we turn him back on," Anya said. "Bag him." The nurse began squeezing the ambu bag, a steady, rhythmic hiss. "Paddles," Anya ordered. Vance handed them to her. They felt small and familiar in her hands. She placed one over the apex of the heart, the other on the back. A non-standard placement, but the right one for this. "Pacing at 20 joules, she said, her voice ringing with command. "Hit it." Vance pressed the button. Elias's chest gave a tiny twitch. On the monitor, a single perfect spike appeared. A Chias complex, a heartbeat. Then nothing. "Again," Anya said. Another twitch. Another spike. A pause. Again, spike. Rate at 80 beats per minute. Hit, hit, hit. Vance worked the machine, his eyes locked on her face, following her cadence like a musician following a conductor. On the screen, a fragile, artificial rhythm began to build. Spike, spike, spike. A perfect, metronomic heartbeat generated by external electricity and sheer force of will. "We have a rhythm." A resident breathed. "A paced rhythm." "It won't hold," Anya said. "The nanites are rebooting, but the core programming is corrupted by the trauma. I have to rewrite the base code." She let go of the paddles and turned to the IO drill that a nurse had brought. "Give me his leg." She drilled into the hard bone of his tibia. a brutal, efficient motion. She attached a syringe filled with a thick, opalescent fluid she had requested from the pharmacy, a specific cocktail of enzymes and electrolytes that wasn't on any standard hospital formulary. She had to tell the bewildered pharmacist the precise, multisyllabic chemical names from memory. "This is the counteragent," she explained, her voice never wavering. "It will force the nanite network to purge the corrupted cascade command and revert to its primary directive, preserve the host." She injected the fluid directly into his bone marrow. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The paced rhythm continued its artificial beat. The only sound was the soft puff of the ambu bag and the steady beep of the machine. Then, on Elias's chest, the blue lights flickered back to life, not in a panicked pulse, but a slow, steady, healthy glow. On the monitor between the paced spikes, a new beat appeared, a small, weak but intrinsic beat. "There," Anya whispered. "There he is. Another beat. And another." Soon, his own heart was fighting for control, beating in time with the external pacer. "Stop pacing," she ordered. Vance turned off the machine. The room held its breath. On the screen, the artificial spikes vanished. For one terrifying, silent second, the line was flat. Then, a single, strong, beautiful sinus beat appeared. And another. And another. A perfect, steady sinus rhythm at 60 beats per minute. Simultaneously, the BP cuff inflated and gave a reading. 110/70, a nurse announced, her voice choked with disbelief. Elias took a deep, shuddering breath on his own. A collective gasp went through the room. They had watched a woman bring a man back from a place beyond death, using medicine that bordered on science fiction, with a calm authority that defied belief. Anya leaned against the gurney, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving a profound, bone-deep weariness in its wake. Dr. Marcus Vance walked slowly around the table until he was standing in front of her. He looked at the stable patient. He looked at the advanced technology humming quietly in the man's chest. He looked at the woman he thought was his timid, unremarkable junior resident. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There were no words in his vocabulary for what he had just seen. Finally, he found three. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice raw with humility and awe. Before she could answer, the doors to the trauma bay slid open. The two agents stepped inside, their faces grim. The lead agent, a man with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much, looked past Vance and directly at her. "Dr. Aris Thorne," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's been a long time. Her cover wasn't just blown, it was vaporized." The ghost was no longer a ghost. She was standing in the brightest, most unforgiving spotlight of her life. Anya straightened up, the exhaustion momentarily forgotten, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. She knew the man standing before her. Not just his type. Him, Director Robert Sterling. The architect of Project Chimera. The man who had sent her and her team into the black site in Al-Qadir. The man who had signed the orders that led to the massacre. "Sterling," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "You're a long way from Langley." "The asset's biometrics tripped a level 7 alert," Sterling said, his eyes flicking to the now stable Elias. "We knew it was either a catastrophic failure or you." He gave a thin, humorless smile. Turns out it was both. Vance looked back and forth between them, his world tilting on its axis. Asset? Dr. Thorne, what is going on here? Sterling ignored him completely, his focus locked on Aris. He needs to be moved to a secure facility immediately. My team will handle the transport. Aris stepped protectively in front of the gurney. Absolutely not. He's my patient. He has a crushed pelvis, 3 broken ribs, and God knows what else. He's post-arrest and hemodynamically stable for now, but he is not stable for transport. That wasn't a request, Dr. Sterling said, his voice hardening. Chief Petty Officer Elias is a critical piece of government property. He contains classified data that is vital to national security. He's a human being, Aris shot back, her voice ringing with a fury that had been dormant for years. And I am his doctor. He goes nowhere until I clear him. The standoff was back, but the stakes were infinitely higher. It was no longer about hospital protocol. It was about a woman standing against the full, crushing weight of the shadow government she had tried to escape. I didn't ask for your input, Thorne, Sterling said, his patience wearing thin. You lost your clearance and your right to an opinion 3 years ago in that desert. The words were a calculated strike, meant to wound, to remind her of her failure. She flinched, the memory rising like bile in her throat. The smoke, the screams, the faces of the men she couldn't save. The ones the system had told her died because she wasn't good enough, fast enough, smart enough. But then she looked at Elias, breathing steadily on the gurney. A man she had saved. A man her skills, not the systems, had brought back. A new strength, cold and hard as steel, settled in her bones. This is my hospital director, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. And that is my patient. You are not taking him. If you try, I will charge you with attempted murder. And I will make it stick. Sterling stared at her, a flicker of surprise in his cold eyes. He was used to people crumbling before him. He wasn't used to this. It was Vance who broke the silence. He stepped up beside Aris, no longer her superior, but her ally. She's right, he said, his voice firm. I am the chief of trauma at this hospital. This patient is medically unstable. Any attempt to move him would be a catastrophic breach of medical ethics and the law. My entire department will back me on that. He looked at Sterling, his expression unyielding. Your authority ends at that door. The other doctors and nurses in the room, who had been watching in stunned silence, began to murmur their agreement. They had witnessed a miracle. They had seen who Aris Thorne really was. And they were with her. Sterling's jaw tightened. He was a man who controlled everything, and he had just walked into a room where he controlled nothing. He glanced at his partner, who subtly shook his head. Forcing their way out wasn't an option, not with this many witnesses. Fine, Sterling bit out. He stays, for now. But this room is now a classified zone. No one enters or leaves without my authorization. My men will secure the perimeter. He pointed at Aris. And you and I are going to have a conversation. We have nothing to talk about, Aris said. We have everything to talk about, Sterling countered. Starting with the fact that the accident that brought him here was no accident. It was a targeted hit. And whoever wants the tech inside him now knows he's here. Which means this hospital is about to become a very dangerous place. The weight of his words settled over the trauma bay, chilling the air more than any air conditioner ever could. The immediate medical crisis was over. A far deadlier one was just beginning. An hour later, the trauma bay had been transformed. Sterling's agents, silent and efficient, had swept the area for bugs, secured the entrances to the entire wing, and established a command post in an adjacent conference room. The hospital was in a soft lockdown, with official stories of a gas leak being fed to the public and non-essential staff. Inside the bay, Elias had been stabilized further. X-rays confirmed the pelvic fracture and multiple rib fractures, one of which had nicked his lung, causing a slow hemothorax that Aris had already treated with a chest tube. He was unconscious, sedated to allow his body to cope with the trauma. Aris was finishing a final check of his vitals when Sterling entered, closing the door behind him. Vance was there too, refusing to leave Aris's side. He had become her shadow, his earlier arrogance replaced by a quiet, watchful respect. His tech is broadcasting a low-level diagnostic signal, Sterling began without preamble. It's encrypted, but it's still a signal. The people who hit him will be able to track it. They know where he is. The question is, when? Not if. They will make a move. Then turn it off, Aris said simply. Sterling almost laughed. It doesn't have an off switch, Doctor. It's woven into his biology. The only way to turn it off is for him to die. Which was their goal in the first place. Who are they? Aris asked, her voice tight. We're not sure, Sterling admitted, a rare crack in his veneer of omniscience. A rival agency. A foreign power. A corporate entity that wants to reverse engineer the Chimera tech. When you build the world's most advanced soldier, everyone wants to steal the blueprints. He paused, his gaze intense. Which brings us to you. You were the chief architect of the Chimera neural interface. You're the only person alive who knows the system better than its creators. You're also a loose end they thought was tied up and buried. I buried myself, Aris corrected him. After Al-Qadir, after you told me my miscalculation caused the cascade failure that killed 6 operators, the memory was sharp, a shard of glass in her mind, the frantic alerts on her screen, the comms filled with screams as the operators' own bodies turned against them. Her desperate, useless attempts to send a system-wide reset command, and Sterling's voice, cold and final, coming over the satellite link, "It's over, Dr. Thorne. Your protocol failed. Stand down." She had lived with that failure for 3 years. It was the ghost that haunted her, that drove her into hiding under a false name, seeking penance in the anonymity of a civilian hospital. About that, Sterling said, his expression unreadable. We may have been mistaken in our initial assessment. Aris stared at him. Mistaken? 6 men are dead. I saw their biosigns flatline. I wrote the post-action report myself. It was my fault. It was what you were meant to believe. A weak voice croaked from the bed. All 3 of them turned. John Elias's eyes were open, slits of pained awareness in his swollen face. He was fighting the sedation. Aris rushed to his side. Reaper? John, can you hear me? Don't try to talk. Have to, he rasped, his hand weakly reaching for hers. He's lying. Not mistaken. They lied. Sterling's face was a mask of stone. Chief, You are not clear to discuss the events of that operation. Clearance be damned, Elias whispered, his voice gaining a desperate strength. She needs to know. It wasn't her fault. The cascade, it was no accident. It was an override command, sent from the outside. Aris felt the floor drop out from under her. What? That's impossible. The system was on a closed network. The only way to send an override like that is with a specific encryption key, a key that only 2 people had. She looked from Elias to Sterling, the horrifying truth dawning on her. Me, she whispered. And you. Sterling didn't flinch. The operation was compromised. We had intel that one of the operators, Sergeant Miller, was attempting to transmit data to a foreign power. We couldn't risk the Chimera tech falling into their hands. A decision was made to neutralize the threat. Neutralize? Aris repeated, the word tasting like poison. You murdered them. You used my fail-safe protocol to kill our own men. We contained a breach. Sterling corrected, his voice cold as a morgue slab. The other 5 men were acceptable losses. You were told it was your error to ensure your silence. It was easier for you to be a disgraced scientist than a whistleblower. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it left her breathless. The guilt she had carried for 3 years, the weight that had crushed her spirit and driven her into hiding, it was a lie. A carefully constructed cage to keep her compliant. Vance looked at Sterling with pure disgust. You let her believe she was responsible for their deaths. It was a matter of national security, Sterling repeated, the phrase a shield against morality. They were coming for me next, weren't they? Aris said, her voice shaking with a cold rage. That's why you let me run. I was the last loose end. You were an asset we couldn't afford to lose, but couldn't risk keeping, Sterling said. Allowing you to disappear was the most viable option. Until now. Elias squeezed her hand. Doc, the package. The data from Al-Qadir. It's not gone. Miller, he didn't transmit it. He stored it. In me. Aris's head snapped toward him. The Chimera system had a small, shielded data storage unit, a black box for mission telemetry. It was supposed to be write protected. He found a back door, Elias coughed, a fleck of blood on his lips. He copied the entire mission log before the cascade. Proof of the override command. Proof of who sent it. It's why they're after me. Not just for the tech, for the truth. Now Aris understood. The car crash wasn't just to get the Chimera hardware. It was to destroy the one piece of evidence that could bring down Sterling and the entire shadow operation behind him. Sterling's expression tightened. That data is classified above your level, Doctor. It is the property of the United States government. It's evidence of a war crime, Aris retorted, her fear being burned away by the fires of her anger, and it's stored inside my patient, which makes it my responsibility. She looked down at Elias, her mind racing, processing the new reality. She wasn't a failure. She was a witness, and her patient wasn't just a patient. He was a living archive of the crime that had defined her life. How do I get it out? She asked him. Neural interface, Elias whispered, his eyes starting to glaze over as the sedatives pulled him back under. You have to link with the system. Only you have the key. His eyes closed, and his breathing evened out. He was gone again, back into the medicated darkness. Aris stood up, her gaze locking with Sterling's. The power dynamic had shifted completely. He had come here to collect an asset. He had found his judge, jury, and executioner. "So that's the play," Sterling said softly, a new dangerous light in his eyes. "You want the data. You think you can expose us. I think I can get justice for 6 men you left to die in the desert," she said. "You're in a hospital, Doctor. You're surrounded by civilians. You have a scalpel. I have a team of trained operators and the full backing of a branch of the government that doesn't officially exist. Your move." The challenge hung in the air. This was no longer just about medicine or ethics. It was a battle for the truth, and the opening shots had just been fired in Trauma Bay 2. Aris Thorne had a choice to make. Stay Dr. Anya Sharma, the quiet resident, and hand over the last piece of her past to the man who ruined her, or embrace the ghost and fight. I was never very good at running. The thought came to me, clear and sharp. I had spent 3 years trying to be someone else, someone small and quiet. But the moment John Elias was wheeled through those doors, that life became an ill-fitting costume. You can't hide from who you are. Sooner or later, the real you stands up. "My move?" I said, the words coming out of my mouth, my voice steady. I looked at Sterling, at the man who had turned my life's work into a murder weapon and my conscience into a prison. "I'm a surgeon, director. I don't make moves. I operate." I turned to Vance. "I need to get him to an operating room. One with an integrated MRI and a bioelectrical interface. We have one in the neuro wing, or 7. Vance blinked, catching up. "A bioelectrical interface? We don't have." "You do," I cut him off. "It was installed 18 months ago for a deep brain stimulation research project. It's probably gathering dust. I need it." "What are you going to do?" he asked, the awe still present in his voice. "I'm going to perform a data extraction," I said. I looked back at Sterling. "And a complete system wipe. By the time I'm done, the only thing left inside Chief Elias will be the nanites required to keep him alive. The sensitive data, the mission logs, the blueprints to your favorite toy. It'll all be gone." Sterling's face went rigid. "That data is not yours to erase. It's not yours to weaponize, either," I countered. "And the proof of your crimes? That's mine. I earned it." He took a step forward, his hand twitching as if reaching for a weapon he wasn't carrying. "I cannot allow you to do this. You don't have a choice," I said. "The system is hardwired to his neural pathways. If you try to move him, or if his body goes into distress, the black box is programmed to corrupt all data. It's a dead man's switch. The only way to safely access it is through a direct neural link with an authorized user. And right now, I'm the only one in the world." I was bluffing. Partially, the dead man's switch was real, but I had no idea if it would be triggered by moving him. But Sterling didn't know that. All he knew was that the multi-billion-dollar program he oversaw was trapped inside a dying soldier, and the only key was a woman he had grievously underestimated. "You'll need to get past my men," he snarled. "Your men are soldiers. Director, they follow orders," I said. "But the men and women in this hospital, they're doctors and nurses. They follow a different code. They swore an oath, and right now, their chief of trauma is standing with me." I glanced at Vance. "Tell me, Dr. Vance, Am I cleared to move my patient to the operating room for a life-saving procedure? Vance didn't hesitate. He drew himself up to his full height, the white coat suddenly looking like a suit of armor. Dr. Thorne has my full authorization. I'll make the arrangements myself. Any person who interferes with the transport of this patient for necessary medical care will be reported to the police for obstruction and endangerment. He looked Sterling dead in the eye. And I will have your credentials, I promise you that. Sterling was trapped. He couldn't afford a public incident. He couldn't risk the local police getting involved and discovering a John Doe patient with military-grade hardware in his chest. And he couldn't risk losing the data. You have 2 hours, he finally bit out, his voice a low growl. Then I'm taking him, with or without the data, and with or without you. It was a threat, and a promise. The clock is ticking, Director, I said, turning my back on him. Vance, let's move. The journey from the ER to O7 was the most tense 10 minutes of my life. It was a slow, surreal procession. Me and Vance pushing the gurney, a team of trusted nurses flanking us. Sterling and his agents followed at a distance, their presence a cold weight on our backs. The hallways were unnaturally quiet, cleared by hospital security. Every corner we turned, I expected an ambush. Not from Sterling's men, but from the ones who had tried to kill Elias in the first place. Sterling had been right about one thing. They were out there, and they were hunting. We made it to the neurosurgery wing without incident. O7 was at the end of a long, isolated corridor. It was exactly as I remembered from the hospital blueprints I had obsessively studied during my first few weeks here. State of the art. And empty. Vance swiped his card, and the doors hissed open. Get him inside and prepped, I ordered the nurses. Standard sterile field, but keep him on the gurney. We'll have to slide him directly into the Miri. As the team moved Elias into the room, Vance pulled me aside. Aris, he said, using my real name for the first time. It sounded strange coming from him. What is this, really? What are you about to do? Something I should have done 3 years ago, I said. I'm going to find the truth. And then what? You can't fight these people. They're a government, a shadow. I know, I said, but a shadow can't exist without light. I'm going to find a switch. I left him standing there and entered the ore. The room was cold, smelling of steel and ozone. In the center was the MRI machine, a great white donut of technological power. To its side, just as I'd hoped, was the bioelectrical interface unit, a complex console of monitors and delicate cranial sensors. It was designed for reading brainwaves, not for initiating a full neural link with a cybernetic implant. I'd have to modify it. Heavily, I need a soldering iron, a multimeter, and a spool of fiber optic cable, I said to a stunned-looking tech. And get me the schematics for this interface. Now, for the next 40 minutes, I worked in a state of controlled fury. While the nurses monitored Elias, I became an engineer. I ripped open the console's casing, my hands moving with the certainty that came from years of field stripping and rebuilding complex electronics in hostile environments. I bypassed safety governors, rerouted power conduits, and soldered new connections, turning the delicate research instrument into a crude but powerful data port. Vance watched me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and profound respect. Where did you learn to do that? The same place I learned to restart a man's heart with 20 joules of electricity, I said without looking up. Necessity. Finally, it was ready. A modified headset with a series of delicate electrodes sat connected to the console. The screens flickered to life, displaying lines of raw code I had written myself years ago. "It's time," I said. I took a deep breath. Once I initiate the link, I'll be completely vulnerable. My consciousness will be inside the Chimera network. I need you to watch my vitals. And his. If either of us starts to crash, you have to pull me out. Understood? Vance nodded, his face grim. I understand. And Vance, I said, meeting his eyes, if Sterling or his men try to enter this room, do not let them in. No matter what. They'll have to kill me first, he said simply. I believed him. I placed the headset on my own head, the cold metal of the electrodes pressing against my temples. I took one last look at the real world, at the quiet hum of the machines and the determined face of Marcus Vance. Then I initiated the link. The world dissolved into a blinding torrent of white light and sound. It was like diving into an ocean of pure information. Data streams rushed past me like currents, glowing lines of code forming vast, complex structures. This was the inside of the Chimera network. My creation. I felt Elias's presence not as a person, but as a core of warmth and light in the distance, the host consciousness. Around it, the nanite network pulsed, a galaxy of tiny, intelligent machines. I pushed my own consciousness through the data streams, following the pathways I had designed. I was looking for the black box, the shielded data core. I found it tucked away behind layers of firewalls and encryption, a dark, silent sphere in the vibrant matrix. As I approached, security protocols flared to life, trying to block me. But they were my protocols. I fed them my unique authorization key, a string of code based on my own DNA sequence, and they dissolved before me. I touched the sphere. The mission log from Al-Qadir flooded my mind, not as data, but as memories. I saw the desert, felt the heat, heard the gunfire. I saw it all from the perspective of every operator in the squad simultaneously. I saw Sergeant Miller, his face tight with fear, realizing they were being tracked. I saw him find the back door in the system, a flaw I had never known existed, and frantically copy the mission data to Elias's black box, just moments before the end. And then I saw it. The override command, a string of malignant red code that sliced through the network. It didn't come from my terminal. I traced its origin signature, my heart pounding in the digital silence. The signature was Sterling's, encrypted, routed through a dozen ghost servers, but unmistakably his, and it contained a second command, a time-delayed protocol, a kill switch for my own system access, meant to activate the moment I tried to intervene. The only reason I had survived was because the satellite uplink was severed by a lucky enemy mortar strike a split second before the command could reach me. He hadn't just been willing to let me take the fall. He had tried to murder me too. I had my proof. The red string of code was the smoking gun. I began to copy the data, pulling the entire log file into a partitioned section of my own consciousness, a mental safe deposit box. Suddenly an alarm shrieked through the digital world. A new presence, an intruder, a virus. It was brutal and fast, a black, jagged thing that tore through the network's defenses. It wasn't trying to steal the data. It was trying to destroy it. The assassins. They couldn't get in physically, so they were trying to hack their way in. The virus slammed into the black box, trying to initiate the data corruption protocol. I fought back, throwing up firewalls, weaving my own code to block it. It was a cybernetic dogfight inside a man's soul. The virus was relentless, adapting, learning. It was military grade, something I had never seen before. It was winning. The black box began to fracture, the data inside starting to degrade. I was losing the proof. Think, Aris, think. I couldn't beat it head on. I needed a different approach. The system's primary directive: preserve the host. I couldn't save the data where it was, but maybe I could move it. With a desperate command, I unlocked the deepest, most dangerous part of the Chimera system, the nanite control protocols. I sent out a single order, not to the network, but to the billions of microscopic machines flowing through John Elias's bloodstream. Reroute. Encode. Survive. I instructed the nanites to absorb the data from the black box, breaking the mission log down into trillions of bits of information and encoding it into their own quantum structure. It was a wildly theoretical application of the technology, something I had hypothesized but never dared to test. The virus slammed into the black box just as the last of the data was absorbed. The sphere shattered into digital dust. The data was gone. The virus, its mission complete, dissolved. But it wasn't gone. It was safe. It was everywhere and nowhere, hidden in the very fabric of Elias's being, woven into the machines that were keeping him alive. It couldn't be accessed or erased without killing him. The data and the host were now one. I had saved the truth. But I was trapped. The neural link I had opened was now fused with the nanite network. I couldn't disconnect. In the real world, the monitors beside my body and Elias's began to scream. "She's crashing." Vance yelled. Her heart rate is spiking, and so is his. They're linked. Outside the ore, Sterling heard the alarms. "What's happening in there?" he demanded, banging on the door. "Open this door." Vance ignored him, his eyes on my face. My body was convulsing in the chair. "Aris, can you hear me? You have to disconnect." I could hear his voice, a distant echo across a vast digital sea. I tried to pull back, to sever the connection, but it was like trying to pull my own mind apart. Just as blackness threatened to consume me, I felt a new presence in the network, a flicker of warmth. Elias, his consciousness, drawn by the commotion, was stirring. He found me, a ghost in his machine, and understood. He couldn't speak, but I felt his intent. A single, powerful thought. "My turn to save you, Doc." He asserted his own control over the network. As the host, his authority was absolute. He pushed against my link, forcing a separation, sacrificing a part of his own stability to give me an exit. A final, clean command from his end. Eject. I was thrown out of the network with the force of a physical explosion. I gasped, my eyes flying open. I was back in the ore. The world came rushing in, the smell of antiseptic, the frantic beeping, the face of Marcus Vance, pale with terror. "She's back," he shouted. I ripped the headset off. My heart was hammering against my ribs. On the monitors, my vitals and Elias's were slowly returning to normal. "Did you get it?" Vance asked, his hands on my shoulders, steadying me. I gave a weak, tired nod. I got it. I looked at the console, at the now blank interface, and I erased the original. It's gone. The door to the ore burst open. Sterling and his agents stormed in, guns drawn. "It's over, Thorne," Sterling yelled, his face a mask of fury. "Whatever you did, it's over. You're coming with us." I slowly, painfully got to my feet. I was exhausted, mentally and physically shattered. But I was smiling. "You're too late, Director," I said, my voice hoarse. "The data from the black box has been wiped." Sterling's face fell. He had lost. The proof he wanted to control was gone forever. "But," I continued, my smile widening, "I made a copy." His head snapped up, hope and fury warring in his eyes. "Where is it?" "Give it to me." "I can't," I said. "It's not on a drive. It's not in a computer. It's in him." I pointed to Elias, who was resting peacefully now, his vitals rock solid. I encoded the data into the nanite matrix. The only way to get it is to decode it, and the only decryption key is locked in my head. You can kill me, but the truth dies with me. You can't kill him, because the nanites will purge the data if his life signs terminate. You want the truth, Director? You have to come through me. And I have some terms. It was the ultimate checkmate. I had turned his own asset into a living vault, and made myself the only key. Sterling stared at me, his mind processing the new, impossible reality. He had come to contain a ghost, and had instead been captured by her. His career, his agency, his entire world was now hanging by a thread, and that thread was held in the hand of the woman he had tried to destroy. For the first time since I had met him, Director Robert Sterling looked beaten. "What are your terms?" he asked, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. The tension in the operating room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. Sterling's agents still had their weapons raised, but the advantage had evaporated. They were just men with guns. I held the real power. First, I began, my voice gaining strength with every word. "You will stand down your men. Here and everywhere. The hunt is over." Sterling gave a curt nod to his agents. Reluctantly, they lowered their weapons. The immediate threat of violence receded, replaced by a cold, hard negotiation. Second, I continued, Chief Petty Officer John Elias is to be given a full, honorable medical discharge. He will receive the best care, for as long as it takes, at a facility of his choosing. His record will be sealed, and he will be allowed to live a normal life. No more acid. He's a hero. He's going home. On the gurney, I could have sworn I saw the corner of Elias's mouth twitch into a smile. "That can be arranged," Sterling conceded, his voice tight. "Third," I said, my gaze hardening, "the families of the 5 other men from the Al-Qadir operation. They were told their sons, their husbands, their fathers died because of operator error or a system malfunction. They will be told the truth, and they will receive full honors and benefits. Their names will be cleared." Sterling hesitated. This was more than just a personnel issue. This was admitting a cover-up. "That will raise questions. It will provide answers," I shot back. "It's non-negotiable." He ground his jaw, the muscle twitching in his cheek. "Fine. And finally," I said, taking a step closer to him, "the data. The proof of what you did. I'm not going to release it. Not yet." A flicker of relief crossed his face, quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why?" "Because sending you to prison doesn't fix the system that created you," I said. It just creates a power vacuum. Another Sterling will take your place. The game will continue. I'm not interested in revenge, Director. I'm interested in change. Vance was looking at me, a dawning understanding on his face. He saw my endgame. Project Chimera is a failure, I stated. Not the technology, but the philosophy behind it. You tried to build a better weapon. You should have been trying to build a better shield. You used it to take lives. I'm going to use it to save them. I laid out my final term. You are going to fund a new unit, a division of your own clandestine agency, but one that operates in the light. We're going to call it the Surgical Trauma and Advanced Response Unit. STAR. It won't be a weapons program. It will be a medical program. We will take the core principles of the Chimera tech, the nanites, the neural interface, the advanced diagnostics, and we will create a team that can deploy to any mass casualty event, any disaster zone, any remote conflict on the planet, and save lives that no one else can. Sterling stared at me, dumbfounded. You want me to give you a department? You're going to give me a blank check and full autonomy, I corrected him. I will be its director. I will choose my own team. We will answer to a civilian oversight committee, not to you. We will be doctors, not assassins. And the data from Al-Qadir? That's my insurance policy. It stays locked inside Chief Elias. If you ever interfere, if you ever try to weaponize my research again, I will decrypt it and burn your entire world to the ground. Am I clear? The audacity of it was breathtaking. I was using the evidence of his crime not to punish him, but to force him to fund its opposite. It was a move so unexpected, so completely outside the realm of his experience, that he was momentarily stunned into silence. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and saw not a disgraced scientist or a rogue element, but a visionary, a leader. He saw the future of his own technology, twisted into a form he never intended, but one that was undeniably powerful. You would hold that over my head forever? He asked quietly. I will hold you to a higher standard, I replied. Consider it my life's work. He was a pragmatist above all else. He weighed his options, a messy public trial and the end of his career, or this, ceding a small piece of his empire to create something new, something that might even, in its own way, be a success he could eventually claim credit for. The choice was obvious. You'll submit a formal proposal by the end of the week, he said, the words clipped and professional. It was his way of surrendering. I'll have my people look at it. I look forward to your swift approval, I said, a thin smile on my face. He gave one last lingering look at Elias, then at me. He turned without another word and swept out of the room, his agents trailing behind him like pilot fish after a shark. The operating room was suddenly, blessedly silent. It was over. Vance let out a long breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. My God, Aris, I have never seen anything like that. Welcome to my world, I said, the exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. My legs felt weak, and I leaned back against the console. No, he said, stepping closer. He looked around the room, at the advanced equipment, at the recovering patient, at me. I think this is about to become our world. He met my eyes, his own shining with a newfound purpose. Your new unit. Star, it's going to need surgeons. It's going to need a damn good chief of trauma. I looked at Marcus Vance, the arrogant, by-the-book surgeon who had, in the space of a few hours, seen his entire understanding of medicine turned upside down. He had been humbled, and in that humility he had found a new strength. He was no longer a rival. He was a partner. "I'll need the best," I said. "Are you the best?" A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "I'm learning." 6 months later, the room was not an operating theater. It was a briefing room, a sensitive, compartmented information facility, deep in the bowels of a building that didn't appear on any public map. The walls were lined with monitors displaying global weather patterns, satellite imagery, and the complex biometrics of assets in the field. I stood at the head of a large conference table. I wore black tactical pants and a grey polo shirt with a simple, elegant logo on the sleeve, a single star with a serpent-entwined staff at its center, the star emblem. Around the table sat my team, a grizzled ex-pararescue jumper who was our logistics chief, a brilliant young bioengineer from MIT who had refined my nanite code, and at my right hand, Dr. Marcus Vance, his face leaner, harder, but more alive than I had ever seen it. On the main screen was a live feed from a disaster zone. A massive earthquake had leveled a remote mountain village in South America. The local infrastructure was non-existent. Hundreds were trapped, injured, dying. "The situation is critical," I said, my voice calm and authoritative. The timid resident, Anya Sharma, was a distant memory, a skin I had shed. "Local first responders are overwhelmed. We have a window of approximately 12 hours to get our primary team on the ground before crush syndrome and infections lead to mass fatalities." I pointed to a map. "Vance, you and I will lead the Alpha team. We'll establish a mobile surgical unit here, at the epicenter. Our priority is extrication and damage control surgery. We're not stabilizing for transport. We are the hospital." He nodded, his focus absolute. "What about Chimera support?" I gestured to another man sitting quietly at the end of the table. He was fit, healthy, and wore the same uniform as us. The scar through his left eyebrow was the only visible sign of his past. "John Elias will be our on-site coordinator," I said. "He has a new role. He's no longer an asset. He is our link. The nanites in his system have been repurposed. He can now network with our new diagnostic sensors, giving us real-time biological data on every patient in the hot zone. He's our eyes and ears on a microscopic level." Elias met my gaze and gave a firm nod. He was no longer a weapon or a vault. He was a guardian. He was using the technology that had almost killed him to save others. We spent the next hour finalizing the plan, a complex ballet of logistics, medicine, and technology that no one else on Earth could perform. As the team filed out to prep for deployment, Vance stayed behind. "From sorting sprains in the ER to this," he said quietly, wonder in his voice. "It's a long way to come." "We didn't come a long way," I said, looking at the images of chaos on the screen, feeling not dread, but purpose. "We just finally came home." He smiled and left me alone in the quiet of the command center. I stood there for a moment, the ghost of Anya Sharma, whispering a final farewell. She had wanted to be invisible, to be safe. But safety was an illusion. Purpose was real. The guilt I had carried was a lie, But the skills I had honed in the darkness were true. I wasn't made for the shadows. I was made to stand in the heart of the storm, a shield against the chaos. My past and present had finally merged, not into a compromise, but into a new, stronger whole. I was no longer a ghost, haunted by the dead. I was a surgeon, fighting for the living. And we had work to do.